can't wait to get started with that conversation. So, can you please tell us how your company came about?
Thank you, Miriam. So we started Clean Tech Hub in 2016, and the idea behind the hub was to have it be a center of innovation where we could get people who wanted to start up electricity businesses, small scale electricity businesses, could find support, whether it was strategy support, support with their business plans, and even support with raising money. And this was from my time because I had just left government. I used to work in the government at the time. And we would have several young people who would come with proposals about how they wanted to start a renewable energy business, maybe in rural communities or peri-urban communities. And there was no support for them at the time. And I used to be very frustrated because I said to myself, well, these are great ideas. If we had 1 million to give them, maybe they would be able to do something. So that's how the whole idea around Clean Technology Hub came about. It was to work with youths who wanted to work in energy access and climate change and help them find opportunities in the sector.
That is very interesting. So, what would you say sparked your interest? Have you always been very interested in clean tech, or was young people not being able to access opportunities a call to action for you to just start?
It was, but I think the turning point for me was, during the first of all, I've always worked in the electricity sector since 2013. So I was working on grid scale electricity. And if you remember at that time in 2013, Nigeria was trying to privatize its electricity sector. So it was unbundling all its electricity assets. That's how we now have all the discos and the gencos that we have. Before it used to be PHCN. But then, yes, we now had to unbundle it. So that was part of the work I and my colleagues were doing at the ministry at the time. And also trying to get our gas-fired plants running so that people could get more electricity. Because part of the shortage in electricity is the fact that we have all these gas-fired plants that have been built under the NIPP project, the National Integrated Power Project, that don't have gas to fire them up. So those were the things we're focused on. We're not focused on renewable energy. But to get back to your question about what really sparked it, I think it was after the Chibok girls kidnapped. And, at the time I had just become a new mom, so it was also for me a very, interesting experience to be right in the middle of all of that while I was also a new mom and just looking at how things were evolving. But I remember, on meeting some of the girls who had escaped, and some of them then saying that, they wish they had electricity the night the kidnap happened because they would have had more opportunity to run away. If you remember, the kidnap had happened in the dark, and there's no light there, Part of the problems that has happened because of the insurgency in the northeast is a lot of electricity assets are out. But if they had renewable energy, maybe it would have been better because they don't have the same sort of big attraction, big assets, the way that all the other core generation or core distribution assets exist in those areas.
That is a really interesting spark of interest. I wasn't really expecting that answer, but
yeah, it was such a. So here's the thing. For me, the question I was asking myself then was, what would it take to get electricity into places like Chibok, communities like Chibok that don't have electricity or have never had electricity? That was a question for me, right? And that's what led me to renewable energy, that if we cannot get the grid to them, because it's a lot of money to get all those grid infrastructure across to those communities, then maybe we can actually use renewable energy and mini grids and microgrids to electrify those communities, those schools, those healthcare centers. That was the big question for me. That was a big issue for me.
That is such a powerful why to start. So I just want to know how the journey has been since 2016 till
now. Yeah, Miriam, it's been a hard journey. I mean, we entrepreneurs in this country, honestly speaking, every one of us deserves an award because you're trying to build something out of nothing. When I started Clean Tech Hub, I honestly didn't know what I was getting myself into. If I did, maybe I would have stayed in paid employment myself. But you're trying to build a business where there isn't any sort of government small business support. There isn't any structure for small businesses to access loans from our commercial banks. So except you have some idea or some person, some mentor to work you through that process, you really don't know what you're doing. It's like groping in the dark and hoping that you find a candle and light a match. And that's the way our experience has been. So we've gone from being a 3-person organization to being an almost 40-person organization, working across maybe 6 countries, and doing work in terms of the policy, the research, the enterprise development, the livelihood support work that we do. And what do we do exactly? We do everything except installing solar systems or renewable energy systems for people, but we support the businesses that do, and we support the communities that get them, to teach them how to use them, and also teach them how to start businesses using those renewable energy. So it's been a hard journey, very limited funding, also harder because you're a woman. Engineering and electricity sector still very male dominated, especially at the top. So I've had to work the way that I've never worked. I thought I was hardworking, but it's been constant to try and prove myself and to make sure that people, believe that I can do the things that we say we are going to do.
That is quite impressive, seeing the growth from 2016 till now. I particularly am interested in hiring more people and spreading across not just Nigeria, but then spreading across what started as solving problems in Nigeria has spread across Africa. So what are some of your key achievements?
So I think it's exactly that, the fact that we've grown exponentially. And it's interesting because I think our real growth stage came in 2020 at the height of COVID. Because then when we had to move, a lot of our operations virtual, we found out that a lot more people could access it. So if we held a webinar about how to run a mini grid company, how to do a climate smart business, people from all over Africa would join those webinars. So that for us was an aha moment to say, oh, yeah, we could reach more people.
There is an opportunity out there.
Yeah, because before then, remember what would happen? If you wanted to run a program, you rent a hall, you invite people, you're even busy thinking about how to support with logistics, the flights, and all of those things. But then you moved it online, and more people were able to access the services and your service offerings. And I think that was actually what started our growth trajectory. And then in terms of staff, finding talent has been hard. Anybody will tell you that. But I think we've been lucky because we use social media to tell our story a lot, and it attracts a lot of young people.
It's quite interesting to hear how you leveraged the pandemic to scale up your business. So was that something you ever expected, or was
No.
just you made lemonade with lemons?
We didn't know because nobody knew what COVID was going to be like. Remember that time we were even still trying to figure out what on earth was this virus? Are we all going to be alive by 2021? So I don't know that anybody could have predicted, nobody, big or small, whatever business it is you're running, could have predicted how that would have shaped up. So it was all unplanned, to answer your question. But one of the things we did well was to run a model where if something worked, we would repeat it, and then we would use that, the lessons learned, to actually then disaggregate the data around what we're doing and think about how we need to do it differently if it's not working, or how we need to scale up if it was working. So, when you ask whether we knew that this was going to happen, nobody could have known. What we did was we leveraged on it, and then we tended to, the other thing that we did was, if one department was doing something very well, one of the things we looked at was how to take the learnings from that department and apply it to other departments. Yes.
So our next question is, how were you able to build on the opportunity provided by COVID to scale up? How did you set structures in place?
That's another good question, because everything was virtual, right? We're working virtually. Yeah. We struggled. I will be very honest with you. One of the things that happened for us, we shut down our office, I think, 2 weeks before the government decided to shut down. And I think this is where small businesses really need to pay attention to their back end. You know, a lot of times businesses tend to focus on the front end. People who are doing the technical stuff, you know, the engineers, the front end staff. I did a lot of work with our back end staff, our admin, our HR, our finance, those sort of people. And our finance person was really on the money, because when COVID happened and it hadn't even reached Nigeria, she was tracking it. We were like, what is this COVID? What does it mean for our business? And they made the call. You know, the other thing I did was I empower my team. They are able to take autonomy and make decisions. So when she made the call and said, listen, we might need to close down, because now that they've said that COVID has come into Nigeria, we need to figure out how to then work with it. Then she put up a template, a structure, plan of how we can work virtually. What does that mean? And then used a week to sort of onboard everybody, so that by the time we closed, people knew when they had to be online. We had meetings, I think 2 or 3 times a week. We worked across departments to set standards and set reporting lines and the sort of deliverables that were expected from people. So those structures were put in place, and that's because our back end support, the HR, the admin, they actually were on top of the money, and they had autonomy to help us evolve quickly.
So structures are very important.
Extremely.
So while we're still on structures, I would like to ask, what is circular economy? Or what a circular economy is?
Yeah, I mean, so circularity for us has been an interesting concept, because one of the things that we also try to do from the time of COVID was to, like I said earlier, was to see how to leverage on each other's departments, each other's skills, each other's talents. So even before we really understood that what we were doing was circularity, we were always talking about, you know, interconnectivity between departments. And the whole idea was to reduce waste and to increase efficiency, which is really what the circular economy and circularity means. How do you reduce wastage? Yes, and how do you increase the efficiency? So for instance, if we had a department that had a proposal to write, people in finance had to be involved in it. People in climate change had to be involved in it. People in it, so everybody had to have a part to play. People in media, our media team and our comms team had to have a hand in it to see, okay, how do we then create a digital footprint around this project? So that's one thing. It was actually looking at how we could use the talent and the resources we had and make sure that we are reducing waste and efficiency. And then looking outside. The whole aspect of circularity has now built into the work that we do, that is program facing, especially with client facing, and thinking about how we can work around with our clients to actually help reduce waste and increase efficiency in our delivery of projects. So that's what circularity really means to us, that we're actually delivering at a higher level and with the least amount of wastage and costs in that delivery process.
So circularity is like a very interesting concept. Globally, we are witnessing a shift from many businesses, especially outside Africa. So many people are adopting circularity, they're integrating it in their own plans and their business plans, and like, you know, just thinking sustainability generally. But what we see here in Nigeria is not very, very common. So how can businesses start thinking, how can small businesses of today rather start thinking with circularity in mind, or structure their businesses with circularity in mind? How can we make it more mainstream?
That's a very good question. I think it will happen, or it's happening actually. It's just that we haven't really found a way to capture that data and to capture that information. Because, you know, with an economy that is contracting globally, and with an economy that is really hitting hard at Nigerians, small businesses don't have a choice in terms of how they're now managing their resources and their efficiency. And they're going to be forced to think, you know, using circularity as a model for running their businesses. And it's not just small businesses, even big businesses. You know, big businesses are not thinking of expanding now. They actually are, some of them are contracting. And what that means is that they're now looking at, okay, with what we have now, how best can we sort of shape the business and make sure that we're continuing to reach our revenue goals. So in terms of how we make it more mainstream, I think, we need to have more people talking, putting a name to it. I can tell you that before I went to the EDC, I didn't know that what we were doing in my organization was secularity. So we went through the Oxfam EDC program, and that was transformational for us. It taught me and my team, because we were privileged in our cohort to have 4 members of our team be trained on that program. But it put a name to all what we have been doing. We didn't used to call it secularity before that, but we came out of that program going, aha, this is exactly what we've been doing. This is our system. Yeah, so we need to be able to name it more and more often and have people talk about it, because people might actually be doing it but don't know that they're doing it. And then the other thing is that by going through the program, what actually happened was that it gave us more opportunities for streamlining our structures and making it more, making them stronger. So in that sense, when you're applying secularity and you're talking about it and you're defining it, people are actually looking out for it, researching it, and trying to find meaning out of it. So I think it's more awareness for people, yes, for small businesses, and encouraging them to actually find programs that will teach them, like the ones that we went for, that will teach them more about what the secularity movement is about.
So a large part of the sustainable economy and people that are practicing sustainability is the ability to step down what you know to other businesses. So how is Clean Tech Hub incorporating that with the businesses you work with?
We run, so there are 2 ways I'll answer that question. First of all, one of the things that Clean Tech Hub is huge on is partnerships. There is very little that we do on our own. In fact, just this morning we were talking about a grant application that we're applying for with 2 other organizations that we met during our Oxfam and EDC program, right? And so that's to give you a flavor of the fact that we consider partnership, and which is the SDG goal 17.
That's my favorite goal.
That's my favorite goal too. It's integral to how you run a business if you're a small business, because there's no way you're going to scale on your own if you're a small business and you're still dealing with bread and butter issues, and you still have, restricted financing. You have to sort of build with each other as you grow. And so that for us is actually a core part of how we make sure that small businesses understand that we're doing this together. In partnership, we can reach scale and build sustainability. And that's the whole secularity movement, right? Is that we are reducing waste and inefficiency and optimizing. Yeah. The other thing we do, I think, is and I think it's important to mention, is we run a street business school. And so let me explain that, because I think it's important and will give you a great idea of how secularity works for us. We support a lot of mini-grid and microgrid companies that go into rural and peri-urban communities to build mini-grid electricity. Some of these communities are only getting light for the first time. And so they see electricity, most times the only thing they use it for is for light or to charge their phone. So we then decided to introduce a street business school, right? Where we go into those communities, after all the work we do initially with them in terms of community engagement, sensitization, demand simulation, feasibility studies, helping with the feasibility studies. So they already know us. But we then go, when the mini grid has been built, to teach them how to use that electricity to start up a small business. So whether it's a small catering business, there are some people we've helped with doing ice block business. They're using the electricity now to earn an income, and to make sure that the light isn't just for them to put on light and charge their phones, but there's actually economic activity and livelihood, yes, that can go on. And that's part of our secularity movement.
And that's part of what we try to put out at EDC, how other businesses can create opportunities for their end users, create jobs for their end users. Okay, so I would just like to talk about some of the businesses you work with. Are there some household names that we know, or they're still?
So we, and I'm careful about mentioning people's names because I haven't asked them if they want to hear their names on radio. But
Okay, it's fine if.
no. I mean, it's fine. We've been lucky to have been funded by quite a few good organizations. People like the FCDO, the UK government, through their access to ACE program, the access to energy program that they run, and even the US government through their Power Africa program has given us funding. But in terms of the kind of brand names that we have worked with, I'm trying to do a quick back end research. So we've done some work with IHS, the tower people.
Yeah.
We've also done something with trying to remember their name, Deloitte and NPSP, and that Deloitte is International Deloitte, US Deloitte. So they're the ones who represent Power Africa in Nigeria and handle Power Africa's work in Nigeria, and we've been lucky to do some work with them in terms of getting decentralized renewable energy, especially research and data, into the hands of people who need them. And lastly, I think the third one that I would mention would be the Heinrich Ball Foundation, or rather, let me even say the Delta State government. In another few weeks, we're going to be launching a roadmap, a clean energy roadmap that we developed in conjunction with the Delta State government, and where they're looking at the world beyond Nigeria, beyond oil. So how are they managing their own energy transition? Looking at everything that is happening since COP26 and the need for countries to now, begin to transition. So Delta State has been the first to sort of work with us in trying to get their energy transition documents in place. So those are three of the ones that I think.
Yeah, thank you for giving us names.
Yeah.
So if you're just joining us, it's still the Small Business Hour with EDC. The numbers to be a part of the show are 081-768-72132 or 081-768-72134. Or you can send in your comments and questions to our WhatsApp number at 090-5353-5305. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.